Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Turn the Page to Autumn, and I'm going to be sipping on my coffee. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, green oxide, Mars black, deep yellow, burnt umber, which I will call brown, chrome yellow, and chrome orange. And of course, you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a white piece of chalk that I will use for some drawing later, and I have 3 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush, I have a number 10 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 1 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the piece of chalk and all the good stuff in between. So that's down there for you. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to be doing for the first step is we're going to be painting our background. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to be using are green, black, and white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a really dark green color along the edges, and then it's going to get a little bit lighter in the middle. We'll add some extra glow to it later, but right now I'm just kind of setting the stage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my green and I'm going to add a little bit of black to it. I'm not going to pre-mix all of my green because I'm going to want to use some of that green on the grass later. But I'm going to use quite a bit of it. As I'm adding my black, I don't need to add a lot of black. The black will very easily take over, so I'm just kind of pretty cautious at the quantity. Let me just turn this so you guys can see it a little bit better. At the quantity of black that I'm adding into it. Because again, I know that the black will take over very, very quickly, so I don't want to overdo it. And I do want to preserve some of my brighter green for later. So I'm just kind of spinning this around. I do know that this will get a little bit darker as it dries as well, so I'm just kind of visually planning for that. I'm making it a little bit lighter than I ultimately want it, just knowing that it will get a little bit darker during the drying process. So this is about where I'm headed with my dark green color, and you could certainly make yours lighter or darker or whatever is visually appealing to you. So once I have it there, what I'm going to do, maybe just a smudge darker. I'm always like, yeah, that's it. No, that's not it. And I just kind of keep adjusting it until I like it. All right, I think that's looking pretty good. So once I've got it into the color that I want, somewhere in through here, I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm going to use my dirty brush and I'm going to pick up some white paint. And this is how I'm going to start the center, the lighter area of my canvas. So I've got that dark green plus white on my brush. I put a good amount in the center of my canvas and I'm just kind of spreading it around. I like to kind of go horizontal and then vertical and just kind of get this to spread out pretty darn far. You could certainly use a bigger brush if you wanted to, but you can see how by doing it in this fashion, I'm kind of getting these soft edges to it. which are going to allow it to intermingle really well with that dark green, which is what I'm going to add to my brush now. So I just added the dark green to my brush, and I'm going to add this along the edges of my canvas. So this is going to go all the way around the outside edge. You can certainly use any type of brush stroke that you want. I will most likely, in the long run, probably do like a circular kind of thing. Oops, just got that in the middle a bit. A circular type of kind of final brush stroke, just to get this exterior color to work well with that interior color. But right now I'm just kind of adding it on in like block kind of sections, so that way I can distinguish that darker area along the outside, and I'll get it to blend in with that center area in a minute. But just kind of getting this on here, and I am using a good amount of paint when it comes to getting this exterior color on here. You might find that you may want to do multiple layers on this. You might get it on, it dries, and you're like, I don't, I want it to be a little bit softer looking or whatever, so you can certainly do multiple layers if you want to. And I'm just kind of getting this to go right into that lighter section. In a second, I will start to blend those two sections in with one another, but right now, just kind of getting this on as close as I can to that center section. And now I'm going to start just blending them in. So I may end up picking up a little bit more white. My center section is still wet, but if by the time you get to this blending area, if your center section it has dried on you, you can certainly just start picking up the dark green plus a little bit of white to get those areas to blend in together. And I'm just kind of doing a overlapping type of technique in through here, where I'm getting that lighter area and the darker area to just overlap one into the next. I have this area over here that seems to have dried a bit more than I wanted it to, so I just added that dark green and the white onto my brush. And now I'm just going to start kind of fiddling with it until I get this blend as blended as I want. So again, this is that time where you may want to do multiple layers on it. I like to kind of keep working it as it's drying, but you might find again that maybe yours has already dried and it's difficult for you to blend at this point. So let it dry all the way and then just do another layer on it. That makes the blending process really easy. It allows you to get those colors to, with a second layer, it'll help you to get them to kind of merge together. And you just do the same process over and over. You start in that middle with that lighter color, and then you can just work those darker areas along the edges. And then we are going to be utilizing our chalk for the next step. So once you've got your exterior done, do as many layers on it as you want, get it to blend as much as you want it to blend, and then you can put this large brush away wherever you like to. Take out your piece of chalk or whatever utensil that you are using for your drawing and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be doing the outline for our book. I'm going to be using my chalk. I do want to forewarn you though that before you start this step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take that extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry, or you can do as I did and just whip out your blow dryer and get it dry that way. So I'm going to give you a couple of markers and we'll just kind of connect the dots, and by the time we're done we'll have what appears to be the outline of a book that's just kind of open and maybe at a little bit of an angle. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to find myself a couple of key points, which is going to be kind of the center of my book. So I'm going to come up from the bottom of my canvas, I would say about 2.5 inches. I am a little bit over to the right of the center, left to right. So this is about where the center of my canvas is. I'm just a little bit to the right of that and up about 2.5 inches. Somewhere in through there, going to make myself a little bit of a marker. I'm going to come up about 2 inches from there and over to the left, maybe about 1.5 to 2 inches. Make myself a little bit of a marker, and you can connect those with a diagonal line, something like that. And then what I'm going to do is this is going to be the bottom part of the pages of the book. So the pages are going to be up top, and then we'll look at the side of the book. So I'm going to go directly over to the right from here. So you can travel over to the right. I'm going to stop maybe about 2 inches from the edge of my canvas and go up about an inch, make myself a little marker. And I'm going to do the same thing over on the left-hand side. So I'm going to just kind of travel over to the left and maybe about 1.5 inches to 2 inches away from the edge of my canvas and go up about 1 inch. These don't have to be exactly the same. Mine are probably off a little bit, and which makes it to me look a little bit more natural because the book is kind of tipped a little bit and the pages might be a little bit more ruffled on one side. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect here to here with a wavy kind of line. So I don't want my wave to go really high up. I only want it to go up maybe at most halfway up this line. So I'm going to go something like this, where I'm going to curve it just a little bit, and then I'm going to bring it down just a little bit and back up, something like that. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. And your wave on the left can be way different than the wave on the right, especially since we've got the book turned a bit. So I'm going to bring this over in this direction, bring it up higher than this mark in through here, but not by much. And then I'm going to just kind of bring it back down and just slope it up just a little bit on that edge. Then what I'm going to do from these 2 corners, I'm going to go up, I would say maybe about 1.5 inches to 2 inches, and bring them in. So up maybe about 1.5 inches to 2 inches. This side I'm going to bring it in maybe about 2 more inches and connect these 2 markers. So this should seemingly be at a similar angle as this center mark, especially on the right hand side because of the angle that I have the book at, and it's a little bit higher than this top here. So if you were to come straight over like this, it's a little bit higher. And then on the left hand side, I've got this one almost at about the same height as this one. So again, my book is turned a little bit. So I'm going to go up to about the height of here, maybe a little bit higher. And I am up maybe about 1.5 inches, 2 inches, in a little bit from here, and then I'm going to connect these 2 like this. And again, we're seeing the book at an angle, so it's all right. And then I'm going to do similar waves from here to here and here to here as I have down in through here. And again, you don't have to make them too dramatic. They're actually farther away from you than these are, so they could seemingly be a little bit smaller. So I'm going to kind of go in through here. I've got a wave coming up like that to emulate that, and then same thing on this side. I've got it a little bit flat in through here, and then I've got my wave coming over in through here. And again, doesn't have to be perfect, but something close is good enough. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to give myself an arcing type of motion underneath this point in through here. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of an arc like that, a little bit of an arc like that. This is going to be the inside of the binder for the book. I'm going to come over to the right hand side in about 1 inch and up about 1.5 inches. And then over on the left hand side, same thing. I'm in about 1 inch, 1.5 inches, and up maybe about 1.5 inches, somewhere there. I'm a little bit outside of this corner here, and I'm a little bit outside of this corner here. And again, they don't have to be exactly perfect. I will connect this marker to here. I'm going to connect this marker to here, and then I'm going to connect these 2 to here. So this is going to be the bottom of the book, or the book binder itself. So I can give myself a little bit of an inside arc like that, and then I'm just going to connect here to here, and I'm going to connect here to here. And that's going to be our outline for the book. We will be using our we're going to use our medium brush for the next step, so you can put your chalk away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting the base coat for our book. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm using are green, orange, brown, black, white, and deep yellow. So I'm not going to use chrome yellow. That's the only color I'm not using on this step. So I'm going to be using my green oxide, and I am just Oh, I said I was using my medium brush. I forgot if I said that or not. I'm going to use my green oxide to paint the top pages of the book. This will be my base coat for what will end up being the little hill or landscape kind of area that we're going to be doing later. I go right into my chalk. The chalk will bleed or, you know, go right into your paint. So you might end up having a little bit lighter of areas with that chalk, but usually it's pretty good at disappearing. But we will we've got plenty of other steps, so if your chalk shows up a little bit, no worries at this stage. As I get into the center of the top section of the book, I'm going to put a little bit of darkness in there, but just kind of getting this main area on here. I'm really not using any special brush stroke, just kind of getting the paint on here because I know we're going to be adding a whole bunch of grass, textured grass on it in a little while, so I'm not concerned about the perfect execution of the paint right now, even along these edges, because we're going to be doing, you know, we got a big tree and some leaves and all kinds of stuff. As I get into this center area, I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just picking up a bit of black paint to give myself a little bit of a shadow in the center there. I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel and pick up a touch of brown to get this shadow area to just kind of go up into my grass. So this is just going to give us that little bit of a dimensional element right in the crease of the book, and you can just kind of get these to work their way into one another. They don't have to be perfect again at this point because we'll be adding a whole bunch of other stuff, maybe a little bit coming on this side as well. But the deepest, darkest would be in the center of that crevice. And then what I'm going to do is I wiped my brush off on my paper towel. I'm going to pick up some black paint, and I am putting a deep shadow underneath this the binder of the book, just bringing it right to the end of my my chalk mark in through there. I'm going to reload my brush with a little bit more black. I'm going to use the black along the book binder, or the book cover, I guess, down in through this area, just having it travel right along that chalk mark. I'm going about an eighth to a quarter inch wide. You could certainly have yours more narrow or more wide, totally up to you. We'll add a little bit of a color to it in a minute. I'm going to bring this the book cover along the edge just a little bit in through here, as if we're just seeing a bit of it going behind the book itself. And of course I'm just kind of squaring off this corner in through here. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, just using black as my starting point for the book cover that is, you know, seemingly going to be in the shadows a bit. It's definitely not a focal point for this image, but it definitely, you know, if you want to get that realistic look, you want to be able to incorporate some of these realistic elements. And then I'm just bringing it down over on this corner. I want to make sure that I have a good little curve down here, so just making sure that I identify where that book cover is going to be. And then what I'm going to do, without washing my brush, I'm going to start picking up white, orange, and brown on my brush. So I have black, white, orange, and brown on my brush right now, and I'm going to start the pages of the book. So this is where I'm going to just do a series of stripes to get the pages to start to emerge. You can certainly do a solid color if you want to, but I really like using this stripe type of technique to do the inside pages on a book, because to me it looks nice and natural. As I get over to the corner of the pages, I'm going to use a more just the tip of my brush, which will give me these little pieces that look like they're the individual pages, but I want to make sure that my brush stroke doesn't stop or doesn't have like a firm end to it as it's traveling through the book. So you want it to look like a continual line. Even though you might have some light spots and some dark spots, that continual line is what's going to sell it as the side of the piece of the paper. And then I'm going to go ahead and do that same thing on the other side. So white, brown, orange, and a touch of black is how I'm going to start this. And as the pages of the book, they'll be more curved up to the top, but when they get down to this area, they would in essence be laying down more. So I'm trying to give it a realistic movement to the pages. I'm going to use a little bit less orange on here just so I can make sure that I don't overdo it with the orange, but of course I'm going to be doing layers upon layers on this as well. And that green color that we used as the base, that really acts as a wonderful starting point for the colors on the pages on the books, because it gives us a good dimensional element to it. So I'm just kind of adding these bits of information with these pages, and this is one of those steps that I know for me, I personally love to do more than one layer. So if you're going about this and you're like, oh, my colors are blending too much, or I'm not getting the dimension that I want, just give it a minute and let it sit and fester, and you can certainly add to it. I'm going to brighten up this little tiny area where the pages kind of all meet in this vicinity, and then make sure that I have some bright pages at the top. This is where I'm going to start picking up my deep yellow. So I've got deep yellow and white. I did not wash my brush, so I'm utilizing that really dirty brush in order to give myself some brighter pages that will show more movement on that book. And we're going to have another step where we kind of finalize the look of these pages, so don't feel as if the way that they look right now has to be the final destination for them. You can certainly just kind of let them sit, let it kind of dry, and see if you're digging the lightness or the darkness of it. And we will have a future step that will be at making sure that we have all of our highlights and shadows and as much dimension in them as we want to. So once you've got this on here, what I'm going to do, my next little task for my pages or my book, is I'm going to put a color on my book cover. You can certainly have yours whatever color you want. I'm choosing to do orange as a complementary color to the trees and the leaves that we're going to be putting up top, but you could certainly do whatever color you want. I think I want a little bit more lightness over in through here on these on the little edges of the pages, and of course, again, you can make yours as dimensional as you want. I'm just wiping my brush off on my paper towel and picking up some orange paint to add the color to my book cover. I'm allowing for my black to still be evident at the bottom of it, to add a little bit of a visual information that it has a bit of a shadow at the bottom of it. So I'm kind of placing this orange either to the top side or the middle of that black section that I created. And then I'll go ahead and do the same thing over here, leaving a little bit of that black showing at the bottom. And if you want to, you can also add a little bit more. I just wiped my brush off on my paper towel to give the illusion of the inside of the cover just kind of fading off into the distance. I had a little bit of orange and just allowed it to dissipate underneath that book, the book cover itself. And you can keep fiddling with this. So I could keep adding, some of the darker black or darker brown down along these bottom pages, maybe a little bit in through the edge where it meets the binder, in through here. You can add a little bit extra shadow in through there. So wherever you think that the shadow would be lurking or hiding within this book, that's where you want to add those extra pieces of dark information, because this is definitely an imaginary setting, so we don't have to follow all the rules as to where shadows and highlights and all that kinds of stuff goes. But if you want to give it that realistic kind of element to it, if you can incorporate some of those realistic elements like shadows and highlights, that adds to the believability that this could come to life to the right imagination. And then we're going to be utilizing our large brush for the next step. So once you've got your pages as rendered as you want to at this point. And again, we'll have that little final step where we'll add any bits of extra highlights and stuff later. But right now I am going to be putting this brush away, taking out my large brush, and getting ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're adding the background glow to the painting. So I'm going to use my large brush. I'm going to be using deep yellow and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to be using my deep yellow first to get the area of where I want this glow to happen. And then I'll be using my deep yellow plus a little bit of white to get some extra special, like, I don't know, atmospheric glow movement. So I'm going to start with just the yellow paint, and the reason why I'm using this deep yellow is because I know that it's translucent, which means you can see through it. So if your yellow that you're using has opacity to it, which means you can't see through it well, then you could use it with a little bit of liquid medium or water to thin it out a little bit so it could be see-through, because I want to be able to see this background behind it. So I know I want my glow to come out of my book, so I'm just utilizing this deep yellow and I'm rubbing it in, and you can see even when I bump into my book, I can still see that book behind it. And I'm just going to make this go as far out as I can. I'm going to add more in a minute, but I want to kind of make sure that what I just put on there, I've dissipated and made it go out as far as I want it to. I'm going to add a touch more. And these bristle brushes are great because they allow you to kind of scrub it onto the canvas and get it to really just kind of blend out. And I'm one of those who, I'm not very nice to my brushes. So if you care more about your brushes than I do, perhaps you want to utilize a brush that you don't love as much, because you might end up hurting your bristles a little bit doing this scrubbing type technique. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this. I want some of this glow to be all throughout, or a lot throughout the painting, so it gives it this real mystical, magical kind of look to it. So I'm bringing it pretty darn far out and kind of letting it, again, dissipate as it goes past that book area, but we can still see that background behind it. And once you've got it in the area that you want, you can start utilizing a touch of white. Now when I go to use the white, you'll want to play with it a little bit because the white, again, is not see-through. So you could utilize a touch of water on your brush. You could utilize a little bit of liquid medium. I know that my white is really thin because it's a student grade paint, so it has a lot of fluid to it. So I'm going to put a little bit of the deep yellow plus a little bit of white on my brush. I know I want it to be brighter in this area in through here, so I'm just going to kind of dabble it in there a bit, rub it around, and then I'm going to start to kind of pull it out wherever I want it to be pulled out. And if you want to, you can certainly add, like I said, a touch of water to your brush and or a little bit of medium on your brush. That's going to allow you to kind of pull it out and get it to be as see-through as you want. I'm going to have some really long pieces that are just really helping to sell the story of this brightness that's just kind of illuminating my the rest of my painting. You can bring them as far out as you want, but I'm getting them to be more brighter in this center area and then just kind of dissipate out into the atmosphere. So again, feel free to make yours as bright and as glowy as you want to. And then we're going to utilize our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your background glow on here, you can put this large brush away and fiddle with it all you want. And if you do something that's too much, you can kind of reverse it a little bit without having to redo that background by, again, utilizing a little bit of water on your brush. You can always kind of scrub it out a little bit if it's still fresh. So just know that if during this painting process you're like, oh my God, I put too much on there. If your undercoat is dry, you can certainly remove that upper layer with a little bit of water on your brush. So know that that's a good way to kind of reverse some action. Might take a little bit of work, but if you needed to do so, that definitely is an option. And then you can get your medium brush out and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're painting our tree trunk and branches. So I'm gonna have my tree emerging from in this area, and it's gonna be kind of like an oak / maple tree, but you could certainly have your tree resemble anything that you want. Mine's gonna be pretty wide at the bottom, and then as it comes up, I'm gonna have it start branching out, maybe like 2 or 3 inches above my book, and I'm gonna have my branches really splaying out really far. But I wanna be able to see some of my background through it, so I will, leave some spots. The colors, I'm gonna use my medium brush. The colors I'm using are black, orange, brown, yellow, and white. And how I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna start it pretty darn dark. I'm gonna be using black, brown, and orange on my brush at the same time. And I'm gonna put it all into place, and then I'll add some highlights. I like using multiple colors on my brush at the same time because that's gonna allow me to have multiple tones within that one object. But I do know that black can easily take over. So if you're going about this and you're like, oh my God, my tree is just 100% black, then just back off of the black a little bit and use more of the brown and the orange to get those initial tones in there. So I'm going to have my tree starting, I would say maybe somewhere in through here, and then I'm going to have the left-hand side, I would say maybe somewhere over in through here, and I'm just going to kind of start building it in through here. When I am doing tree trunks and branches and things of that nature, I don't really like to hold my brush super tight like a pencil up like this. I like to hold it on the looser side, so that way when I'm going about doing the edges and creating those branches, my tendency is to give them a little bit of movement, a little bit more wiggle, whereas if I was holding it tight like a pencil, I might end up with some really straight branches, and it might not look as natural as I want it to look. So feel free to hold your brush whatever way you'd like, but that's kind of my MO when I'm doing branches and things of that nature. I want them to look natural, so I end up holding my brush on a looser type of fashion, so I can get those more organic type of brush strokes. I'm just kind of slowing down here for a minute so I can plan out where I want these branches to go. I think I'm gonna have this one kind of coming in through here. I just really want to plan out my main branches, and then I can, once I've got my main branches on there, then I can really start to, no pun intended, but branch out and do my smaller branches and the ones that are gonna have, kind of fill in my gaps and stuff. So I've got my tree kind of branching out in through here. So when I am building my trees, I really like my branches to be nice and thick by the trunk and then get thinner as they go farther away. So as I'm building it, those are the thoughts that are going through my head, that these branches can be nice and thick as they're meeting that trunk, and then as they go away from the trunk, they can get thinner and thinner. And I like them to have lots of movement and have lots of little branches kind of flicking out here and there. So you can certainly utilize your own, visual preference when it comes to creating trees, but I like mine to have lots of character to them and to have lots of movement and things of that nature. I do want to have the insinuation that there's leaves coming up and kind of canopying the top of my canvas, so I know that it's important for me to have a couple of these branches reaching the top of my canvas, so that's why I'm going all the way up in a lot of these areas. And then once I've got it, pretty much formulated the way that I want, now I just can kind of sit here and really make a whole bunch of little branches that can just come out and fill in a lot of these spaces. I'm just alternating right now the brown, orange, and white as I go to, or brown, orange, and black as I go to reload my brush every now and again. And as I'm doing these skinnier branches, I do have a good amount of paint on my brush and I am not pushing hard. So you might find that you want to add or use a different size brush for the little ones. But I know that I'm going to have a lot of a lot of leaves and stuff on my tree, which could potentially hide some unwanted branches if I want. But if I do have those littler edges, I'm just, you know, releasing the pressure on my brush, which allows me to have those tinier marks. So I feel like I got it pretty much where I want it. So I'm gonna wipe my brush off on my paper towel and start adding a little bits of highlights. I don't really need to do much for the highlights. So I'm going to use my deep yellow and white. I'm not quite sure if I said that or not, but in the beginning that those would be the additional colors that I use. But I'm really just going to add some extra bits of highlights with my deep yellow and white. You could use your orange also for some little highlights throughout the tree. And I'm just kind of sporadically streaking in along the edges of some of these branches, little bits of highlights. So it's going to insinuate that glow that is coming out of that book is casting these pretty highlights throughout the tree. And they really can be anywhere you want them to, because we're going to have little sparkle glow dots all over the place. So you can, you know, have fun with putting these highlights wherever you want, because there's not just one light source here. We've got lots of light sources coming from those magical glow dots that are going to be coming out of the book. So once you've got this all nice and set, we are going to be switching to our large brush for the next step. So you can put the medium brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting the leaves on the tree top as well as our grass on the top of the book. So I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are orange, deep yellow, white, and if I need to, maybe a little green, but if I use that, I'll let you know. So I'm going to start up top with my leaves on the top of my tree. I'm going to start with orange on my big brush. So I'm going to be using a stippling or dotting type of technique to get these leaves to be put into place. I know that my orange is going to get darker as it dries. So I know that the thicker my orange is, the brighter it will be. The thinner it is, the darker it will be. So I'm going to naturally be able to get light orange and dark orange just by the thickness of the paint. So as I'm doing this, I'm kind of keeping that in mind, that I've got, you know, some thicker areas that will appear to be a little bit brighter, and as my brush is running out of paint, that's where it's going to look a little bit darker. We are going to have the leaves that are falling out of the tree and kind of coming towards the viewer. Those will have more distinct shape to them. But right now I'm just really looking to kind of give myself a good exterior framing of the painting with this orange color that's going to be complementary to our book cover or book binder, and the yellow is obviously going to speak to the fall colors. And I am bringing this all the way over this right hand side and down the right hand side a little bit. I'm going to start incorporating some of the deep yellow onto my brush right now without washing my brush. I'm going to start incorporating that into some of my orange leaves a little bit. And again, I know that this is going to take on more vibrancy the thicker it is. So I'm just kind of utilizing it in a sporadic manner. I don't want them all to be the same color all throughout the tree, so I'm allowing to have a variety of the yellows and the oranges. And then in a second I will add a tiny bit of white paint to my brush with yellow as well, and this will give me a couple of extra pops of brightness that I'm putting towards the top of the tree, almost to insinuate that there's maybe an additional light source coming from above, but you could certainly add these lighter pieces down below, which would indicate that they might be being illuminated by the glow of those sparkly pieces that we'll put in a minute. And if you feel like you go too much or you have too much paint on your brush, don't feel like you can't wash it and dry it throughout the process. So I'm going to just kind of give mine a good quick rinse because I feel like I want a little bit more orange in some of these areas. So I just washed it and dried it, and I'm picking up a little bit more orange just to kind of get this color to transcend down that tree just a little bit more. And I'm going in front of some of my branches, but I'm not covering them all up. And then I'm going to wash and dry my brush for my grassy area. And so my thought process is I'm going to have it the darkest down in through here, and it's going to get lighter as it comes up towards that glowy part. So I'm going to start with a little bit of green. I don't know if I said I might use green. I'm definitely using green. And I'm going to start it with just a dotting type of technique. I know that our base color was green, but I'm just kind of, you know, getting that paint wet right now, allowing myself to add a little bit of maybe textured look to it. Now I'm picking up my deep yellow without washing my brush to get these two colors to start to intermingle with one another. And I'm going to have it again darker on these as it's farther away from the light source, which is the glow that's coming out from the middle of the book. But we are going to have some extra glow from the little glow dots that we'll be putting on there later too. So you can certainly have some of this yellow, you know, and lighter areas wherever you'd like to. And I'm just going to add some of this yellow in through here. I hear a delivery truck coming, so we're going to see how excited my little pepperoonies get when it comes down my driveway. And I'm going to just bring this lighter yellow. Again, I'm just using deep yellow right now, intermingling it through the top side of this grassy knoll kind of area that's on our book cover. Now, without washing my brush, I'm picking up a touch of white paint to illuminate or get these edges, make it really look like we've got some grass that's full of life here, and that's being illuminated by whatever that glowing source is. You can even bring it up higher than the book, the outline of the book that you had originally created. I'm going to put a little bit over here on the edges as if it's being, you know, kissed by whatever sparkle dots we might incorporate over there. And then you can just kind of keep tweaking it. So if I feel like I want a little bit more of that brightness coming along this ridge or this little hill that's being created, you can go ahead and add a little bit more in through there, or maybe coming in through here. So wherever you feel like that glow would illuminate, feel free to put some lightness in through there. I'm just tapping in this little bit of texture to create this effect. Make sure I got a little bit more yellow in this little edge in through here. And then we are going to be utilizing our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your grass and your leaves all nice and illuminated and colorful, you can put this large brush away wherever you'd like to. Take out your small brush. And see, now's the time where I'm just going to keep tweaking, and you can get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to be doing for the next step is I'm painting the falling leaves. So these are going to be the ones that are just kind of in midair and are traveling from the tree into, you know, being closer to the viewer. So these are going to have a lot more detail than what we did up top. I'm going to be using my small brush, and because I want them to emulate the leaves up top, I'm going to use the same colors, which are orange, yellow, the deep yellow, white, and I'll probably use a little bit of black and or brown to put some details on the leaves that are closest to us. So what I'm going to first do is just in my mind, I'm going to kind of plan it out. I think I'm going to have a couple falling from on this side, you know, just a couple on there. And then I'm going to have them falling from this tree, but kind of coming out in a magical movement kind of way. So I'm going to have them a couple really small in through here, and I'm gonna, in my head, I'm imagining them coming close to the viewer, and they would get bigger and bigger. So I'm gonna have small, and then I'll just progressively get them larger and larger as they're coming towards this left side. I'm not gonna do more than like 5 or 6 leaves in the center area, and then maybe just 2 over there. So I'm going to start with whatever my base color for that leaf would be. So for these ones over here, maybe I start with a little bit of my deep yellow, I'm going for a very loose interpretation of like a maple leaf or an oak leaf where it has lots of little points and stuff along the edges, and maybe we see some from the side and they're just falling in different directions. So maybe I've got a little one over here that we're just kind of seeing the side of, and it's got these little kind of points along the edges. Maybe I'm picking up a little bit of orange with my yellow now. Maybe this one's got a little bit more, it's curved in the opposite direction, and we've got some little points and stuff along the edges. I will utilize some white in a minute, but right now I'm just going to kind of get my leaves to be falling where I want them to. So right now I'm just kind of using yellow and orange as my base coat. I think I'm going to have a little cute one kind of coming out in through here. I think I need a little more orange so we can kind of see it on top of that background. So I'm really just kind of utilizing maybe a curve as the center or the stem of the leaf, and then I can give it a little bit more movement for wherever the stem or the edges would be. So I think this one I'm going to have, maybe I'll have a little poking out on the side there. And, you know, you can certainly Google different kind of leaves and make these look, you know, in whatever style of leaf that you want. But where I live, we have a lot of maple trees and a lot of these trees with the bigger leaves. As I'm coming towards this left, I'm going to start to make them a little bit larger so I can sell the story of this of these leaves coming towards the viewer. And they might look a little muted right now as I'm getting this first coat on, but as I create the details to them, I'll get them to look more detailed. So right now I'm really just kind of switching from my deep yellow and my orange on my brush without washing my brush. This allows me to have different tones again throughout that leaf. Maybe a little more orange on this one, and you could certainly use red, you could use, you know, brown, you can really use any kind of autumn inspired color to create your leaves. And, you know, just have fun with them, just making them nice and organic and having lots of points to them and shape to them. That's going to sell the story of this being a you know, realistic but kind of fantasy type of painting with some realistic kind of elements to it. I'm going to have a big hue. I think I might make this one a little bit bigger, because I want it to be, you know, seemingly bigger than that one, so it looks like it's closer to the viewer, so we just add a little bit more on through there. So I'm going to have a really big one in through here. So I know my stem is going to be somewhere in through here. I'm going to have this one looking from the side like it's just floating right towards that viewer. So I'm going to have this kind of looking from the side. It's going to get a little more narrow where it's going to meet that stem. So something like this. And, you know, again, imagine yours to be whatever you want. I like looking at them from the side. It allows me to kind of be a little bit more carefree when it comes to forming it. So feel free to make yours whatever way that you want. And now that I've got them kind of placed where I want them to be, I'm going to just add little bits of highlights and shadows. So we can just wipe your brush off on your paper towel. I'm going to add some little stems and maybe some little shadows. So I picked up some orange and black on my brush, and I'm just going to kind of maybe add a little bit of a stem here and there, maybe a little bit of shadow or something along the bottom side of them, or not of all of them. I'm just kind of working with the ones that are more closer to us, where I feel like I might see the detail on it a bit more. So if I feel like I might see the little veins in it, I can certainly incorporate that. If I feel like I might see the stem a bit more, you can certainly make a little bit darker of a stem. Like I feel like I'd see a stem on this one, and this one probably would have a dark shadow underneath it, and maybe some little pieces of the veins going up the sides. So use your imagination when it comes to this. If you can kind of imagine, you know, that you're looking at it from the side or something, that helps you to build the detail on it. I want some little bits of highlights so they look like they're glowing. So I just wiped my brush, or washed my brush. I'm putting some white with whatever color you want. So I've got white with a little bit of yellow on my brush right now, just to illuminate it just a little bit more. Maybe you do white with a little bit of orange. So I'm just really streaking in bits of highlights so it looks like they may in fact be being illuminated by those, by the little sparkle dots that we're going to be putting on in a minute. And you know, you can have fun with however bright you want these to be. I'm going to put little bits of lightness on the edges, on some of the edges. I just try not to overdo it. You know, I want to sell the story of them being illuminated by something. So that something is probably the sparkle dots that we're going to be putting throughout the painting. So I'm just kind of, you know, in my head imagining that that's what's happening. So right now I've got white with maybe I'll put a little bit more yellow on this one. And if you ever feel that your brush is overloaded and that all your colors are coming out the same on the painting, that means that you should probably just wash and dry your brush, because it may just be carrying too many of those, you know, of the colors in there, or maybe it's not, your canvas hasn't dried enough and you're just blending everything together. So you might want to let the canvas dry or add, you know, wash and dry your brush. I'm using, again, just a little bit of the yellow, deep yellow and white as my highlight colors, but you could certainly use light orange. You could work that into the equation. You can pre-mix it on your palette if you wanted to, but going with whatever autumn type of colors and highlights that you want is totally your call. I'm going to add a little bit more orange itself onto here. Again, using that thought process, the thicker my orange is, the more vibrant it will be. I can continue to add some of that orange color right on top of that base coat, and it will make areas of that orange more vibrant as well. And then we are going to be utilizing this small brush for the next step. So once you've got all of your beautiful autumn leaves just falling from your tree and making their way to the viewer, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're finishing the details on our book. So it'll be our little grass that's at the bottom of the tree, any little leaves that have fallen onto the ground, and then any little details that we feel like might need a little more finessing on the pages and the binder. So I'm going to use my small brush. I'm going to be using deep yellow, white, green, black, brown, orange. So the only color I'm not using is chrome yellow right now. So I'm going to start with some little pieces of grass underneath here. I just started with some black paint. I'm utilizing the black paint so you can feel and see some little silhouettes of or shadowy pieces of grass throughout here. This does a couple of things. One, it helps to hide the bottom of the tree. So if that wasn't perfect, you don't necessarily want it to look straight across. This will help to hide that kind of detail or that kind of thing. I just picked up green. It also adds a little bit more interesting to me information to the painting, because what it's going to do is say, oh my God, there's something growing on there. It's not just that tree that has sprouted, there's also stuff growing, and the landscaper didn't come by and trim it. I just picked up some yellow and white, going to give myself a couple of extra bright pieces of grass over in through here, bringing them along into the grass line. You can certainly have fun with making this as wild or as subtle as you want. I really just like to kind of add these little bits of details to just, you know, again, add that extra dimensional element, add a little extra detail to it. And then I'm going to go ahead and maybe I'm picking up a little bit of brown and black just to make sure I have enough kind of shadow underneath my grass in through here. You can certainly, you know, give it as many dimensional elements as you want, but just adding those little pieces of shadow underneath will help to make it look nice and dimensional. I'm going to give myself a couple of leaves on the ground that have fallen, so I'm just going to go with my orange and my deep yellow to just make a couple little marks on the ground. So that was some orange. I'm picking up a little bit of my deep yellow now, making some couple of little strategic marks in through here. I'm not giving it much detail. I wiped my brush off on my paper towel. I'm picking up a tiny bit of black to give a little bit of a shadow underneath some of these leaves. That's going to, again, just add a tiny bit of a dimensional element to it and allow it to look like those leaves are in fact maybe piled up. You could certainly add as many as you want. You could add a little bit of white and yellow if you wanted it to look like they're multicolored, or, you know, have fun with that. You don't need to do a whole lot to tell the story that there's some leaves that have fallen on the ground. Then I'm going to hit my pages of my book. So this would just be if you wanted to make sure that top line was nice and visible, or has enough highlight to it because it's at the top. I just added a little bit of yellow and white, and again, I'm only using my my deep yellow at this point. I'm reserving my chrome yellow for my sparkle dots later. So that's where that's going to come into play. So just adding a bit more shimmer or highlight towards the top edges of these pages, just because I didn't feel like mine was popping enough. I just felt like I wanted to add a bit more into that, as well as maybe over here on the tips. So again, I'm just utilizing this last step on these on the book and its pages to give myself that little bit extra realistic element to it, because I know for me, as my paint dries, sometimes you know, where I thought I had a lot of detail might actually not be as detailed as I wanted it to be. So this just gives me that opportunity to kind of just come back and make sure that I have everything rendered as much as I want it to. So I'm going to go ahead and add a bit more highlight to this little piece in through here where all the pages come together, and just make sure that it translates as well as I want it to, making sure that I keep some of that darkness in between the pages so you can feel like they're separated a bit, and you can certainly keep fiddling and playing with that all you want. I think I want a little more brightness over here on the edges. And again, this is one of those steps that if you step back and look at it from a distance, you really can see more of it, you know, when you're looking at it from a distance, because you're cutting out all of, you're not this close to it. You're seeing it from a distance, which can help. I just added a bit of orange onto here to add a little bit more of an antique-y kind of look to the pages, as opposed to them being crisp white and bright and new. I want mine to look a little more dirty and have a little bit more antique kind of feel to them, but you can certainly manipulate yours whatever color that you would like, adding a bit more of that highlight up and through here so you can still, and again, I just kind of keep tweaking mine. And then the book cover itself, I'm adding a bunch of orange to my brush so I can make sure that this is as vibrant as I want. And if your orange turns too dark on you, you could, or if you wanted a different color that's more vibrant, you could add a lighter version of it. You could add it with a bit of white in it, and then add the true color on top of it. Because sometimes when we're working on top of a dark base like this, it may not get as vibrant as you want it. So either you just keep layering it until it is as bright as you want it, or you can add a lighter layer first with a lighter version of that color and then come back with your true color. I think I'm going to add a little bit of black in between my pages and my book cover, because I really want this to look like like the book pages are maybe casting a shadow on the book cover, or that there's some sort of separation between the two. So I just added a bit of black between my book cover and my pages. Yeah, that's working visually for me. And maybe a little bit more black in through here so it looks like it's a little bit deeper in that crevice, and then a little bit of black underneath these pages in through here. And then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your book all nice and completed, make any little adjustments that you want, and then you can take this brush and just wash it and dry it and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be putting sparkly marks all throughout our atmosphere. So I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm going to be using white and chrome yellow for this one. So I wanted to change up the yellow a little bit so it didn't compete with the other yellow that we had in the painting. So that's why I'm choosing to do a lighter, brighter kind of yellow for these sparkly marks, these glow type of marks. So I'm going to start with a little bit of white on my brush because I know for me one of the biggest things that I wanted this sparkle stuff to tell the story of is these leaves kind of coming out of the tree and to the viewer. So I'm just putting a little bit of white paint on my brush, and I'm going to tell the viewer that's what's happening by making these tiny little dots that are going to show the movement of these leaves. So if you ever watch or look at old cartoons, they have movement marks. So you might see them with lines or dots that, not all of them, but some of them do. And that will imply what's happening to that particular object. So I am utilizing that thought process to tell you, oh my God, they're coming out here, they're moving into this direction, they're going to get bigger as they come towards the viewer and towards this larger one. There, maybe it's going to move up. You can think of the painting Starry Night by Van Gogh. In his wind, he has all kinds of jagged marks that tell the movement of that, or the motion of that of the wind. And he did that with mark making. So you can certainly do that throughout your paintings in a nice subtle way that helps the viewer understand what's happening. So now that I've got that in there, now I'm just going to be really carefree with my mark making. I want it also to be implied that the glow is coming out from the center of the canvas. So I'm going to be putting some big dots coming out and through here, just varying sizes, and kind of getting them to splay out in the direction that I want. I don't want to overdo that area where the motion is coming, or that I've set the air in motion, but I definitely want to have some coming out of this small area, the main area in through here. I just keep reloading my brush at this point, giving myself a couple of additional marks coming out wherever I want them to come out. Maybe I've got a couple in through here. They don't all have to be just dots. I'm going to do some like starbursts in a second, but right now just kind of doing little dots in various sizes to give the information of what I want to convey to the viewer. So if I wanted to do like a starburst, what I do is I just start with a circle, and I'm just going to kind of bring it out in these. I just quickly pull it out with my brush to give it the idea that it is shimmering. And you can do that, on several of them. I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing it on too many, because it might take away from that motion that we have in play in the center, but you could certainly do it to some of them. And I'm just starting with white at this point. I'm going to add my chrome yellow in a little bit, but right now just kind of understanding where I want all my little sparkly marks to go, and I'm trying to give them little different sizes. I'm putting my head back here for a minute so I can see this from a distance. Maybe I have, one over here. Maybe I think I'm going to have another starburst one over in here. So I'll start with a little circle and then just kind of quickly pull out some little splay of the brightness coming out from those. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to start to utilize some yellow, the chrome yellow, with my white. So I just picked up some of my chrome yellow. You can put it on top of some of these marks, the white marks that you've already put in there, or you can do additional marks, whatever really works for you. You can certainly have fun with this, I might put it on top of some like this, make it go out a little bit further, and then you can even come back in and put another additional little white dot inside of it. So you can really get these to glow if you want to. So if you want some of them to have some extra special little glow aspect to them, what you can do, I'll show you in 1 second. Sometimes it's hard to stop. It's hard to switch thought process. So I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel, pick up just the chrome orange, or chrome yellow, sorry, and you can take one of these marks and give it a glow on the outside with that chrome yellow, and then pick up a tiny bit of white and put it back on top, a little bit on top of that original dot. So you can utilize, like I'll do it with this star, or with this bursting one. I can take my chrome yellow and pull that out even further than I had the original burst, and that's going to give you extra glow within that mark. And then you just pick up a little bit of white and you re-brighten part of that center. And again, you don't want to do that to every one. I want this to kind of look inconsistent and like the magic is just taking over, not the analytical thought of the painter. I just want it to just kind of happen. So I definitely have mine a little more on the carefree side. Yours could certainly be very organized and take on a definite thought process to them. I'm trying to leave the motion ones more on the white side, so again they remain that focal point for the movement. I want a little bit of my yellow over here, but I want it to be more glowy. So again, if you use white with the yellow, it won't be as glowy or translucent. You want to use the yellow alone at times to get that see-throughness to happen, which is going to allow it to look more like a glow as opposed to just light yellow on top. You'll be able to see through it a little bit more. So if you wipe your brush off, so you're just utilizing the yellow, you'll have those see-through marks, which make it look even nice and special. And then you just kind of keep adding as many little glow marks as you want. Whoops, just dropped my brush a little bit. And again, look at it from a distance. Have a lot coming out of this center area, so that makes it look like, you know, that's the kind of nucleus as to where the brightness is coming from. And then once you feel like you've got enough glowing aspects to your painting, we are going to utilize this small brush for the next step, so you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm going to sign this one in the bottom left with black paint. I sign my initials, but you could certainly sign your first name or the date, or you could use any kind of symbol that you want. Whatever works for you as your identifying mark is totally fine. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a very magical autumn image, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.